hi everyone. We're here another week at Mutant Watch, and this week we have not one but three guests. And we have that's awesome. We have a Carefree Black Nerd, Rhayne, who is over there, and you should listen to his podcast. It's like really good, and it has a lot of deep dive into characters. Some of them are from X-Men or related comics, so you're gonna like that. And we have Carrie Harris, Carrie over there, who wrote Justice and Liberty for All, the X-Men novel, and who we interviewed like, I don't know, a month ago. And and today she comes to talk as a fan. And and we have Regina, the Red Queen of X, um, from the House of X podcast. We already have the House of X podcast here, I don't know, many months ago. And and in fact, this show is happening because we asked Regina what would she like to talk about in the show, and she said like family stuff and relationship of family within mutants and etc. And we delivered. So so that's what we want to talk about today. And before we start the show, I want to remind everyone about the thing that is happening in Texas with the snowstorm and etc. And to stay informed, and mostly if you can do some form of mutual aid, not all of them are economic, not there are some other people that may need help. It's all over social media, and maybe we can post some links later. I'll figure out that. And and so that's it. And aside from that, we have usually here, as always, Gabriel and Travis and me, Duna. And let's kick this off.
This week on Mutant Watch.
So, for starting today, first I want to ask you, everyone, about what are. Let's start with favorites because it's the best way to start a conversation. What are your favorites, or yeah, start with favorites, families in mutant comics, and I'm gonna leave it pretty open, but we can talk about both families like of blood and families adopted and chosen families, which are three different types of things, and we can talk about both of them, or there's three if someone has a three. And who wants to start?
I'll start.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Well, the reason that this comes up for me quite a bit is because I'm a huge fan of the Cyclops and Phoenix miniseries that came out way back in the 90s, The Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix. And it came about because Rachel Summers was thrown into the time stream. She went like thousands of years into the future, and she created Clan Ascani, who would come back to rescue baby Cable from the techno-organic virus. So it's, of course, comics. But in doing so, she was quite elderly at the time, and her body just couldn't handle the strain of everything that had happened at that point. They were under attack by Apocalypse and his prelates, and she basically went into a coma. But at the end of the series, as she's dying, she reaches out to Nathan, who is discorporating. His body is coming apart because he can't figure out how to pull himself together, literally. And she helps him through that. And she tells him, "You'll never be alone." And that just got me. And I think you can have that feeling whether you're biologically related or not. But I always loved this concept of Rachel not really being raised with Nathan, but loving him as if they had been. And I just love that.
So who wants to go next?
I don't know. I don't. I feel like I'm going to butcher the name, but like I've heard it both ways. The Saint Croix or Saint Croix family, Monet, Morris, Nicole, Claudette. They are just that. Being introduced to Generation X after like being raised off X-Men, the '92 cartoon, and then seeing this like group of kids mismatched, different races, different economic backgrounds, and they're all in this one. It was like wish fulfillment as a kid. But that girl, Monet, has imprinted on me. Like it's well into my 70s. I will be a stan of that family. The dysfunction, the artwork. I cannot express my love for her and that family without the first couple issues of Generation X, the Phoenix Covenant. Like, I don't know what it is. Seeing her in the backseat of that limo before getting, I guess, enveloped by the Phalanx, and then like starting Generation X, I have just imprinted on her the smug attitude, the knowledge to back it up, the superior strength, and then like as a kid, a young queer kid, seeing another brown woman who wasn't Storm with all this immense power. And even though Marvel has been kind of questionable with the way they show autism, that still for me as a kid opened me up to autism and different types of neural conditions that I as a child I wouldn't have even known about. So like I'm digging into like it's that girl Monet is my sister. I don't care. Like she is two-dimensional sister. I love her and her whole ridiculous family. So that's it.
Co-sign.
Yes.
Yeah, same.
I'll jump in next because I'll be honest, my favorite family is one of the most basic and simple families in X-Men history. No time travel shenanigans, no merging together to make imposter shenanigans, but just the all-American Guthrie clan.
Yes.
Just something about them I've just always loved. Husk, I like you. I started with Generation X, and Paige was instantly one of my favorites, which then led me to Sam Cannonball, who was my favorite X-Man until Duna got a hold of me and converted me to Richter. Just something about the family and how they are able to focus on everyday dynamics, the pressure of being the oldest sibling, with the brood of younger siblings who we still don't all have names for, or even a concrete amount of how many of them there are. And the fact that each one we do see has their own personality. We have Cannonball, who is like the young soldier. We have Husk, who is the perfectionist. We have Icarus, who's a little bit of the rebel. We have Arrow, who just wants to be fun. We had Joelle, who joined an anti-mutant hate group. We had Elizabeth, who was a villain in an alternate timeline. I guess it does get a little bit complicated. There's just so many of them, and each one is unique in its own way. And anytime you have two Guthries on a panel together, it's gold, in my opinion.
I agree.
Well, one of my favorites, actually, I talked about last time I was here, Ilyana and Colossus. Are my all-time favorites, and part of the reason I think I love them, I was thinking about this after I found out what we were going to be talking about today, and I kind of like the fact that they didn't grow up side by side. I grew up wanting to have siblings so badly. I was an only child, and when you don't have any siblings, you have to blame everything on the dog, and that doesn't work so well because he doesn't have opposable. And look, he's in my face. He doesn't have opposable thumbs. It doesn't work out so good. But then when I grew up, I learned that I have a brother, and I didn't know about it. And to have that instant connection with someone who you've never met and to just click is a kind of magic. And I think Ilyana and Colossus kind of do that, because they don't grow up together, but they still have that bond. and I buy it. And I bought it even before I met my brother. So to have that and now see it reflected in the comics is super cool. So that's part of the reason why I love them. And also Ilyana is funny and nobody ever gets it. She is.
He is.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Somebody gets it.
You want to go? Or you want me to go?
Go first.
So for me, I think it's a little different. I went to boarding school. I went to St. Catherine's Indian School in Santa Fe, which closed down right after I left. We are still losing members constantly. I think a third of my graduating class died. I left halfway through the year. I think a third of them died by that summer. We just lost 2 more students this last month. One to COVID, one with a hit and run on the Navajo res. And so for me, like X-Men comics, and especially Fallen Angels, New Mutants, it was about that there was family in as soon as you put them together, because they had other things tying them there. One of which was that it was offering them a home, but that the world was also very threatening. They were very limited in terms of who else was out there. And so when I think of X-Men and family, I tend to think of those school relationships or those relationships like Fallen Angels or Exterminators, where they really fell together, but they had each other.
Damn, that's beautiful. Okay. So I guess it's my turn. Well, I think my favorite one is very like Travis said. It's in my case, it's probably due to the fact that I really didn't make like not necessarily family, but like friends till I was like 16 or something like that. So when I started like having like this thing of choosing the people that I want to spend the rest of my life with or something like that, but like in plural. And in that kind, I was really like inspired by what I wanted to find in other people, and that I relate to New Mutants, to reading New Mutants, and I feel like the kids in New Mutants, they don't have really like their adults as families with them for most part. Ilyana is a fun exception, but because of Colossus, but in general they don't have that because of very different situations. Some of those are very tragic, like Danny's one. But they kind of build that with each other, build that connection of we are like very, very close. And I think that's my favorite one. I think the New Mutants as my children. and I don't know, and Magneto and Xavier are like the grumpy dads, but like jokes aside, that's what most call me to when I think of family and mutants. I think a lot of the New Mutants and how they kind of found each other by accident, which has this like component of accident, but it could be applied to Fallen Angels and to Exterminators totally. I just chose my favorite children. But I completely agree with Carrie in the Colossus and Ilyana relationship, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna talk about that more in the show today. But like, yeah, I completely agree that it's a very beautiful relationship. It sometimes gets pretty messy, but I think that's great because that's real. But I think it's a great. I don't know. I remember like those panels of Ilyana remembering like Colossus reading her traditional Russian stories, and then she goes to like find them at the library, just to have that feeling of like comfortness, and that's like something that really struck me as really, really well put on the page. And and so before we start, we continue talking about good things. I want to ask you all about your least favorite mutant families. And not everyone can say the Summers.
On it.
Oh. Jeez.
Well,
yeah,
you
that's
could-
a hard question.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard once you put that disclaimer on it.
I mean,
No, you can. I was joking with the disclaimer.
Um,
oh.
Well, I mean,
Come on.
can we at least talk about the Summers first? Because that family bothers me. Can we get it out of the way?
Yeah, okay. So before we go into the bad things, this is pretty bad sometimes. So it can we need to talk if we want to talk families and mutants. There's a need to talk about the Summers, whatever that means, and whoever that includes. If it's Adam X or it is not Adam X, if it includes or doesn't include sidekicks, Gambit, and Sinister. I don't know, but yeah, like I don't know. I think most people that will be watching will know what the Summers are about. But if somebody wants to give a summary of why this is too much, go ahead.
Well, I guess I'm not sure if why I think it's too much is why other people think it's too much. But actually, the whole family thing is part of the reason why I think people get really polarized about Scott Summers, because all the X-Men are looking for family. You know, you're looking for a place to belong. You're looking for people, and he has that more than a lot of the other characters, right? You know, he has people, he has blood. And to me, the thing that gets me about Scott is that he's too too wrapped up in his personal crusade to realize what he's got. And to appreciate the family that everybody else is looking for. And I'm not sure if that's why it bothers other people, but that's what gets me, is that you've got a thing. Everybody else wants the thing and you've got it, and you don't realize it or you don't care.
Yeah.
I don't know. Am I crazy?
No.
I think historically that may have been true, but in the more current books, I think he has overcome it a lot. He's making the point to, make dinner and sit down with his family and let's have that sense that he didn't have ever before. And there were so many points where he had the thing, but it was disjointed. So he's got a baby, but the baby is kidnapped, or the baby is 2,000 years in the future. And he's got this daughter, but the mother is gone. And the daughter is pissed at him because now he's got a girlfriend. And I do think that that's relatable for a lot of people, but it is too much sometimes.
Well, and maybe part of the reason why he's so polarizing too, because depending on how you look at it.
I mean, how many women did he either cheat on or ghost before around making dinner once?
All of them.
I was going to say, do I have enough fingers?
I agree. I think that has something to do with it. And if we're talking about families historically, and we can go into the deep, reasons of editorial mandates, etc. But as far as family is concerned, Scott has not been a really good family man historically. Like Regina said, that he is doing that turnaround, but he was still the one to deliver the news that the mother of his child is not going to be able to be alive anymore. Like, that's not really advocating for family. But more so for me, like the thing about the Summers family, and I kind of extending it to beyond just Scott, the entire Summers Gray clan, I feel like it's a lot of the writers and the comics telling me how important and awesome and cool they are, while shoving all these other more dynamic families and dynamic characters we know to the side, because we have to talk about Scott. we have to talk about Havoc and Cable and Jean and Rachel and Vulcan and Adam X and well, no one ever talks about Adam X, but and it seems like I find it to be very much like the Star Wars phenomenon that if you want to have a character be interesting, they need to be related to Luke Skywalker. So if you want to have an X-Men character be important and crucial, they need to be somehow involved in the Summers Gray loop-de-loop. Also, this is my personal peeve because I love the Guthries. You have this family where they're popping out multiple mutants, but Sinister is obsessed with the Summers. Really, Sinister, don't you want to look at Lucinda Guthrie? She popped out so many mutant babies.
Yeah.
She is obviously the key to something.
Yeah, yes.
Those genes are strong.
And variable, because none of them have the same kind of powers.
Right.
And I actually have a rant I could go on about how all of the Guthries, except for Melody, are secretly incredibly powerful. But that's a whole nother rant later. The point is, Sinister is obsessed with the Summers because they want us to be obsessed with the Summers, and I don't buy into it.
I agree. Yeah, Thomas and Lucinda definitely have a stew that is absolutely amazing.
They have some good genes.
Yes.
It's the water.
That's the next big relaunch. After Hickman is done, it's going to be the Guthries for 3 years.
You know what? I would buy every single comic multiple times. I am all about that.
I like the Summers. I grew up and they were, like you said, that's what was given to me as like these are who you need to follow. I didn't like Jean Grey for a while. Nothing against her. I just felt like, what are you doing? That's from the '92 show. But what?
I think we all had that reaction.
Like,
what she was doing was fainting. That's what she was doing in 1992.
Oh my god, it was so.
She flirted too. Come on, give her credit.
She did do that.
Fainting and flirting. You're right. True.
But no, I turned around and I will say I didn't become a fan until like X-Men Red. That's when I really was like, I'm on the Jean Grey train. My issue, I guess, is really with Scott and Alex's mother, because if there's so many Summers and all these different timelines and different powers and whatnot, Corsair should not be the only parent that has survived. Like, I'm like, there's no way to then see what a Summers clan that is raised or at least has interactions with their mother. Like, that's been my biggest stuff since I was a kid. It's like, why is Corsair he's a horrible father. He's like all the way on this side of the Shi'ar Empire, and his kids are down here in an orphanage. Well, one of them so for me, it always goes back to the mother. Like, whatever issues I have with Jean Grey and Nate and Madeline and all that, it's like, what would Scott's life be like if he had a mother figure? Because Xavier is horrible. I extend him in the Summers. Like, what could he say? You're a jerk. He's horrible. I don't.
He looks good compared to Scott's previous there. The Jack of Diamonds.
That's fair.
That isn't saying much.
The bar is set very low.
Right.
Well, I feel like the bar is set very low, but Xavier still manages to trip on it.
Yeah.
Requirements are not be in space and be alive, and somehow Xavier is still not a good idea.
True.
Oh, I know. I finally got it. I know who I don't like. The family that I don't like. And once I say it, you guys are going to be like, oh, yeah. Fenris.
Okay.
Oh, no. I forget that they are mutants.
You block out.
Yeah.
Yes,
Also,
we all blacked.
Well, the thing about Fenris that gets me is my first introduction to Fenris as actual characters, not just hearing about them, was Swordsman in Thunderbolts. And I actually really, really liked him. And then I found about everything else, the Nazi, the implied incest. I'm like, why? Why are they still in comics?
That's the bread and butter of comics right there, though.
Ooh.
I mean, going back to the summers, I don't know why I have to do this, but, but if there's one thing that could be said that is positive is that there's these things are like big versions of things that happen to people in real life. Like they're like big soap opera dramas, and with the summers it's like hyper big, like you go like 1,000 years into the future and then whatever, but it's like a way of conveying emotional messages that actually happen to people. They actually lose part of their family. They're actually that's and in that way I can see why it's interesting. And there are certain storylines like in X Factor, in the first X Factor by Louise Simonson. In that one, I think Scott is at least interesting. I mean, he's not a character that I emphasize with, but he's an interesting story to look at, like how that feels, you know, like dating someone that is like your dad's wife, and then it's like exaggeration. Like these things don't happen in real life, but they're like similar in some ways to things that happen to people. And I think in that way they're very good in that specific way.
One thing I can say in defense of the Summers, well, in the defense of Scott Summers, is yes, Scott is a horrible dad for most of his existence, but there aren't really that many good parents in the X-Men comics. You have Mystique, who literally chucked her child off a cliff.
I need to talk about that later.
So that's how she motherhooded.
And assassinated another one.
There you go. And and assassinated the other one. You have Banshee, who didn't know about his daughter for most of her entire life.
If Banshee was the father of your child, would you tell him?
Hey, Banshee had a rough time, but he pulled it together. He pulled it together. And then it's just one after another of just everyone either has bad parents or is a bad parent. I mean, look at Angel, who has like his like apocalypse twin babies that no one ever talks about anymore. And his own father was a bad person. You have Sunspot, whose father was horrible and I'm pretty sure a supervillain, or almost a supervillain. And it's just like there aren't really good dads in particular, and not many good moms either in X-Men, at least, if not the Greater Marvel.
Yeah. Except for John and Elaine Gray. They were very there. And Jean had a pretty good life with them.
Yeah.
Except for the fact that she's totally forgotten she has a niece and a nephew that are murdered.
Dead.
And has not put them on the resurrection queue for let's get them going again.
Lord, yes. Man.
But yes, I think that people do connect with the Summers, Gray, Frost clans because of that drama. Because how many of us don't have good father figures? How many of us have a father who cheated on their mom and, you know, mom's gone now and girlfriend is still here and she's the boss of everything and we don't like her, you know? And how many of us have, you know, maybe parents who were so dysfunctional, they might as well not have been there, or we would have been better off if they hadn't been there. So I think that we do have connections, and that's why they kind of stay so popular, Sinister notwithstanding.
I will say Jubilee, a good mom. Jubilee is the good X-Men mom.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
I like Scott. Like, I'm writing a book on New X-Men right now, which I'll start serializing in a couple weeks. And I'm having to deal with how much Scott moves everything in that run. And what I realize is I like Scott, but I like that Scott screws up all the time. And that motivates all these other plots. It motivates other things. So I can get mad at Scott, but I'm glad that he's in the stories, because without him in the stories, most of what I like wouldn't happen. The balls don't get rolling.
Mm.
On the other hand, Havoc, I just don't like. And I haven't
Really?
X Factor, when Rhayne was brainwashed to be his underage sex slave, and in Peter David's X Factor, she still has residual confusion about that, an obsession, and he's such an ass about it and blames her. And she's like canonically like 16 at that time or younger, and he's a grown adult who's her boss, and he's still like, I don't know, she needs to get over this. And it's like, no.
Well, and then there's the whole "don't call me mutant" thing. Like,
that was terrible. And well, I'm in general, but yeah.
Yo.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
bad. But
Yeah.
The thing about Alex that gets me is he's kind of, and granted, I've not read too much of his original X Factor one, but at least currently, he is solely defined by Scott.
yes,
It's like he doesn't really have a personality beyond his relationship with Scott, his emotions related to being related to Scott. He is a two-dimensional person filled with brother issues.
Which is so strange. God. That is so weird. Like didn't he like have trouble graduate? Like, wasn't there a whole thing where like him and Polaris were trying to graduate school? Like, yeah, that's why it's so weird. I agree though.
But I think while we were discussing, I decided who my least favorite mutant family is, and it's unsurprising since the Patriarch is one of my least favorite X-Men ever, and that is Wolverine and his never-ending brood of children. I love Laura on her own. I love Dakin on his own. I love Gabby on her own. I love Flex on his own, and I will fight that to the grave that Flex is his child. But just the fact that there's still more. There's 4 that I mentioned, and they just keep popping out just for Wolverine to kill them, and then us never talk about that again. Like,
yeah.
And also he's like, oh, I have one child here, but I don't like her. I prefer this child. And that's like,
and like, he also, on top of that, he also has like a son that in like the Savage Land apparently, and he has an adopted daughter he just left with someone else over in like Japan, and like he just like epitome of horrible father. But we all still love Logan, and the only way to make a character cool apparently is to have them be related to Logan. Also, we also still have Jimmy Hudson floating around somewhere. He's alive. He's a symbiote. He's alive and somewhere. So yeah, that's my least favorite.
I keep thinking I was actually going to say something about the same thing because Logan is hooking up with everyone again, which means there will be more.
No,
it's gonna happen. I will bet you. I will bet you money because he is. Who has he not hooked up with in Krakoa?
Jubilee. Thankfully, they've kept that separate.
That would be creepy.
Yes, and that is one thing I will say about Logan is they've never crossed that boundary with his 1 million adopted female teenagers. They've never crossed the line, with Kate Pride or Rogue or Jubilee.
Rogue.
Regina has that look on her face. That was a thing?
That was a brief thing, but it was a thing.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah. Very brief.
I take back everything I was about to say.
Nice things, if they're going to take it away.
Oh man!
But at the same time, I mean, I don't want to justify it, but I think Rogue is an exception. There's always the exception to the rule, and she's the exception because nobody can touch her. And sometimes you need and that's something I think I connect with Rogue all the time is that. For so long, she couldn't touch people. And not just physically, but mentally. She could not connect with people because she was always in pain. And if you have that moment where you can touch somebody without harming them or with minimal harm, go for it. Just do it. Just to get just to have something for yourself. So, brief moment. Totally an exception.
You see, I can get that explanation on Rogue's side, but as a mentor, the responsibility would have fallen on Logan to be like, nah.
Very
They were consenting adults.
Well, I think too with Rose, everybody has a different opinion on how old she is.
Right.
Yeah.
That's like with most.
No one likes Rogue as a teenager.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah.
You know, there was a whole period in the 90s where I was sure she's like 32. Like, she's a teenager, she can't drink beer.
Especially because like the whole thing that happened with Captain Marvel and etc. She was like in 1,000 comics, so you felt like she had to grow. Like these experiences don't match out together in just like a few years.
But you see, the timeline in X-Men makes no sense. We have Sam's son, who looks like he has to be at least like 3 or 4, and then we have Shogo, who is still like 3 months old somehow.
Damn, yes.
No one lets that baby walk. I'm confused as to how any of this is happening.
But he can fly.
Because that's the only way he was going to be able to be mobile on his own, apparently, because he doesn't age.
Does anyone know what happened with Colossus's kid in the sagas?
No.
He's still there. He's still there. He made a brief appearance when we found out that part of Colossus's family is Rasputin.
Yeah.
He made a brief appearance. They had a brief scene of some teenage son sitting up in pain because he was the last surviving member of Colossus's bloodline.
Wow.
And then no one spoke about it again, like most of the ex-children.
That's what the Adam book need to be about, is those forgotten children. That's what it should have been.
Yeah.
Jesus. Yeah, there are a lot. Ugh.
I was cranky about that one for years, and then it just never seemed to get acknowledged again. So
that is a great idea, though. I want to see the support group. Like for all the forgotten ex-children.
Yes.
I want it. Heck, I'll write it. I want it.
Go ahead, take my money. I think that's honestly my biggest issue with not even the Summers, just everyone. I know over the years there have been a bunch of different creative teams and company mandates and whatnot, but and I'm severely behind on Hickman. I don't care about spoilers. If you tell that, that's fine. But like when we started Dawn of X, with the Krakoa is our home family of it all, it felt good, but I felt like, man, there's still so many forgotten children and characters who, I don't know, John, who's like 37 and only read, the first one of X-Men, he has somebody he imprinted on. And then Sarah, who's 14, maybe finds an old book and like, now there's this one character. And it's like all these different, I don't think it's impossible. I know it's a large task, but like there's so many alternate and forgotten children, family members, that if we're going to resurrect all of these people and have these protocols, and now it's one mutant, one life, where are they? Like,
so we've seen some unexpected people. Like I know in Cable we had an appearance by Stinger from the Old Alliance of Evil, and Omerta from Eve of Extinction, and they have a baby. I stopped reading Cable after that, so I don't know if they came back, but their baby was kidnapped, and then there was X of Swords. So I think their baby might still be missing. I'm not entirely sure. And then I feel like a lot of the reference to forgotten characters is done more in background art than anything. Which I don't know if that's an artist being awesome or a writer being awesome, but I think that's a good way to make the little nods. Like Slipstream has shown up. The second Pyro has shown up. Bedlam, I think, has shown up. Thunderbird, Neil Shahara, like the 17th Thunderbird, he shows up. So it's like those little Easter eggs in the background if you look for them. And I'm excited. In Way of X, which I think comes out in April, we're finally getting DJ featured in a comic, who is one of my favorite obscure characters to ever exist.
Cool.
One thing really has bugged me with the current stuff is that they have that easy resurrection and they make that a point. And then there are characters who are denied resurrection, either temporarily or permanently. And those are characters that are family to other characters. And they make that the point. And there's only so long where I can stay with that, where they're like, Mystique's just like, I want my wife back. Or when X Factor relaunched, and the first thing they do is kill somebody's sister off to launch the series. And, we're not going to resurrect her. And I know it works out in the end, but it bothers me every time. And that they make that a point. Gabby asking what happens if I die. And she's a kid. And they're like, well, you're a clone. So, oh, well.
Oh.
You know, that's like hard. Like she hadn't had enough in her life.
Well, I mean, I think that's going to be a bigger, my assessment is, it will be a bigger plot point in the future. And we were supposed to be mad that Maddie wasn't resurrected.
Yeah.
And that they kind of brush off Gabby's question. And I think I hope that that's part of something that Hickman has a plan for, because it doesn't make sense. This poor little girl is like, well, what would happen to me? And they're like, well, Maddie was bad, but you're not bad. But they don't really answer.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm thinking it's going to be part of a larger plot point, so I'm happy to watch it unfold. I do want to say that I really loved when they brought back Jamie Braddock, and Betsy's first reaction was, "What the hell?"
Yeah. Yeah, one having it.
Yeah, not at all. She was just like, "Wait, why wouldn't you tell me about this first?"
Yeah.
Have they acknowledged in the recent books that Charles is a clone? Because he's a clone.
Yeah, I mean, basically, they all have clone bodies at this point.
Yeah, but I mean, have they acknowledged that he is? I mean, he was a clone before,
right?
Like with the Shar stuff. So if they've got a no clone policy, I mean, have they discussed that at all? Because I haven't kept up with a lot of them. I'm especially with the swords thing that never seemed to end. I
think the whole clone policy boils down to duplicates of a person. And that's why X Factor started off with the bit of a delay of Aurora, was like, we need to make sure we know that she's dead and not just a belief that she's dead, because they don't want multiple of the same person floating around, which
not
I'm getting the impression we actually do have that with Prodigy, but that's a whole different topic. But I think that since there's only one Charles, and yes, he's a clone, kind of, but it's like still his brain that's been behind it at all times, it's okay. As opposed to Maddie, who we have Jean Grey, and like poor characters like Genesis and Bloodstorm, who ain't do nothing wrong but can't come back to life, just because they feel like it.
Yeah, that's legit.
Yeah.
Very government.
And on a side note, speaking of reasons to hate the Summers, Bloodstorm is dead solely because she decided to go on a date with Scott. Wow. And then she was murdered and no one spoke about it again. End result, don't date Summers. It's bad.
Maybe we'll get lucky and he'll take out Wolverine before Wolverine has another kid.
Please.
We could all hope.
Okay, so aside from Gabriel one, and I think Regina's one also, who are your least favorite? I'm getting into track. Not smoothly, but effectively.
I'm going to go with one of the families that I enjoy them, but I hate them as people. And that would be like Iceman's parents.
Oh, God.
Both sets of parents. Those are just, even like before Iceman's parents were like, his dad was a full-blown bigot and his mom just let it happen. Like the 80s. His parents were terrible. And Iceman was the first one when the new X-Men come in Uncanny. Iceman is the first one to be racist and don't come to my house and I don't know if you can read. That's from home life. That's he didn't learn that, at the school. And you see his parents, like when he was trying to be an accountant, even before he was a full-blown bigot, they were just not good people. So every time they come in, I am against them. And I do not buy the comic where he cries with his dad and has this whole thing. I'm like, no.
Right.
So that's my pick.
That's fair. I back that. I hate his parents.
Yeah.
I do too.
I don't like the Braddocks. I don't like them. I'm sorry. I don't. I think my issue with them is probably continuity wise, like appearances, and it's just then with. I know we're getting better, but like even with the Psylocke stuff, even that was kind of like, I just overall and Captain Britain, I've never liked them. Like Brian is. To me, he was always like just a shitty older brother, just like a terrible, like every time, like if you've seen Bridgerton, he's like head of the family who's not doing the job to make everyone else. Though I don't know, I don't like them. I've never connected with the Braddocks. I'm sorry.
It's fine. Most people do. It's just like. That's a great interpretation. I mean, and I totally agree. Brian was a terrible brother. He was a terrible boyfriend. He seems to be, now that he's a father, he seems to have been mellowed out.
Thankfully.
And he's gotten better. So once you get through Excalibur, you'll kind of see him grow.
Okay, because
do better.
Megan didn't deserve any. I don't like him.
Yeah, like he was a horrible boyfriend, but he seems a better husband since in X of Swords, Wolverine was trying to get him to cheat on his wife, and he was like, no, I won't do that. And Wolverine's like, take one for the team. And Brian's like, no. So, I think he grew up, but I could definitely, like you brought up Bridgerton. I've only seen like an episode and a half, but it's that same mentality of like the men's club and the boys is boy. And that was very much Brian in the beginning. So I can definitely see, plus it's a really convoluted family.
Yeah, and it's not their fault, but
I think the best part is I could be wrong, so Regina can correct me if I'm wrong. The funny thing about him just being the douchey older brother is I think Betsy's technically older by like a couple of minutes because they're twins.
Yes.
So the fact that
I think
the fact that he is the douchey older brother, despite not being being the youngest of the three of them, takes a special kind of talent.
I don't like him.
Well, they're a weird fit for like the X-Men world too, because it is a whole convoluted family that had dozens of issues, dozens of comics. And then suddenly they're just kind of dropped into X-Men because Claremont wanted to keep using them. But suddenly Psylocke, before she joins the X-Men, she's a model, she's a spy, she's a helicopter pilot. She has a lot going on. And the minute she joins the X-Men, she's flirting with a 14-year-old nerd that doesn't know how to do anything. And that was kind of to make her fit the X-Men. And then she's Ninja in a different body. A lot of bending over backwards to make those characters fit better in the X-Men. That I don't think really always works.
Right.
I will say about the Braddocks, I like Maggie.
Yeah.
The baby that is also somehow older than Shogo, despite being born after, and is smarter than both her parents.
Magic.
But when one of them is Brian, Brian's actually really smart, but he's still somehow an idiot. But I like the baby. I like the baby.
She's a troublemaker. I love her.
We need more babies. Like there should just be an X-Babies, but rather than the X-Men down as little toddlers, just all the toddler little baby children.
Right.
We need an X-Baby book like the Power Pack. So like all of Beak's kids and Shogo.
And Josiah Guthrie. We have Omerta's baby who will somehow be older than Shogo soon. I am convinced that Opal's kid is still Bobby's son. There was some lines in I think it was Majori Lou's Astonishing X-Men, where it gave me the impression that Opal said that he wasn't Bobby's kid because she didn't think Bobby was ready for kids.
Oh, okay.
And she was having a conversation. I can't remember the exact panel, but it seemed like she was gonna say more, and then either she was interrupted or she was stopped. So I do think that's Bobby's kid. And then we also have they need to resurrect Tyr. I don't know why they're not. And have Rhane's kid come back, and you can just have an X baby book, and I would read the heck out of that.
So who's left for the horrible families?
Carrie.
Yeah, me.
Carrie. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah. Okay, well, here's one. I'm not sure that I dislike them, but it is a very dysfunctional family that makes very bad things happen.
Right.
And then it turns out they're not really family after all.
I was also going to talk about that one.
Oh.
Were you?
Yeah, but go ahead.
Well, Magneto and Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver kind of kill a whole bunch of people while trying to be a good relative. They're maybe trying to take care of each other, maybe kind of in a weird and twisted way, and end up killing thousands of mutants because that's how you say I love you.
Well, I think
that's not good.
You're right. That's the whole family, because you also have Polaris, who her way of trying to prove to her dad that she was part of the family at first was to be evil.
Family business.
They're a family that makes the Summers look simple. Because we also have Wiccan and Speed, who are Scarlet Witch's children, but not her children, but also still her children, but not. But yes.
Doesn't Eric have like 2 human children like prior to any of this? He just had one.
I think he had one.
Here, don't they?
And the New Mutants.
And then he died, and he was like, "All right, well, more kids."
Yeah. Well, and you're not mutants, so I don't care.
Like, I know he had the one daughter who was murdered, and that's one of the reasons he became evil.
But that's a horrible.
And then, I mean, it was like the 60s or the 70s, and their best way to give a character inspiration was to kill a woman. So it kind of fit in with comics at the time. And then Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver made things complicated, and then Polaris made things more complicated, and then Wiccan and Speed just decided to keep that ball rolling.
Family business.
So I guess it's my turn. I have the same. I mean, they're my least favorite, but mostly because I don't like how they're written. Not only because they're dysfunctional. And yeah, it's Magneto and his children or whatever, or not children or whatever. And I feel like my most bad feeling with that is that supposedly this. I mean, it makes sense as they're dysfunctional because supposedly, even although now not, supposedly these are the child of Magneto and a woman that he met in a concentration camp. So like that makes sense. It's a dysfunctional relationship, but also at the same time, I'm kind of sad that this relation. I don't know, but he's painted as such a horrible father constantly, and probably because I have some care of my own for the character, so I don't like that. And I wish that could somehow go back to some healing for them, but I know that's not gonna work in how things are now. Mostly because Wanda and Pietro apparently are mutants, which is a thing I'm not a fan of, especially being two Romani characters that they're like faking something. So it seems very off to me, and also doesn't make a lot of sense. But I don't know. I just don't like it, and I feel like every time I'm gonna oppose it to like Apocalypse. Like the recent Apocalypse thing that happened with X of Swords was also a lot about conflict and about trauma and about people that don't have healthy relationships because they survived something horrible, and that's very alike what of the situation with Magneto and Wanda and Pietro, but it's not done in the same way. In the Apocalypse, in the X of Swords, it ends with them reconciling, even if we know that it's not gonna work immediately. But in House of M, it's like worse, 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 worse. And I don't see the point in making characters suffer for the sake of suffering.
I think Magneto also has some potential as a father that we don't really get to see. And I think that's part of the reason why I named them too, was because he's bad, but he's not like, he has some redeeming qualities that he doesn't get to exhibit as a parent at all. It's kind of like you said, you know, it's out of all the possible choices we can make, what's the worst one? Well, let's do that. And
over.
Exactly, making the worst choice once is great for a story, but to keep doing it, like, give him a chance to connect with them, or like, I wanted that one moment before everything went bad, and I'm not sure, I can't think of it. Did we get it? I don't think we did.
Never. And I think that even if that's the route they wanted to go, of always making the worst possible decision, I do think that there is still a story there to tell. Even with Wanda and Pietro not being mutants, not being Magneto's kids, I think that there is a very good story there to tell about adopted families or found families versus biological families and all that other stuff. And it just seems like every time they get close to possibly telling that story, they decide to take the easiest route to avoid it. There is so many psychologically, there is so many like family dynamics in that family. The way Magneto treats Pietro versus the way he treats Polaris. The way the three of them all interact. The way Magneto responded to his possible maybe, but not really grandchildren. All of this are great stories that would make for a great dynamic in a book, but for some reason, every time we start getting close, they just do something to mess it up. And like, yes, I get that they went the route, and we can once more have that discussion about editorial about Wanda and Pietro not being Magneto's kids, but they still were his kids for
a time.
A time, which may or may not be long, depending on how time in comic books work. But they were his kids. They made bonds. They made enough bonds that House of M happened because it was all done because Wanda was trying to appease Pietro, who was trying to appease Magneto.
And I think that brings up really important questions that they need to resolve, or at least address, with, you know, if you do have somebody that you find, that you adopt, that you care for, and then there's no biological link. And this happens in real life. I can't tell you how many people I know who were raised by men that found out, oh, that's not really my dad, but you were raised as that man's child. What responsibility do they have for you once you find out that biologically that's no longer there? But I think you do still have that responsibility, and that needs to be addressed. And if Magneto calls Wanda the Pretender one more time, you might see me in a comic book slapping the crap out of him.
I do, however, love how he got called out in Sword for that. That was awesome. But I also agree with, like, Black Tom Cassidy raised Siren.
Right.
Yet in X Factor, they went to Banshee to find out more about her, but not Black Tom, despite him being on the island and being featured in a book. The one comic I do want to call out that does address the Quicksilver Magneto relationship after all of this came out, I don't think a lot of X fans read it because it wasn't an X book, was Quicksilver No Surrender. In this, it's a mini series that follows after the Avengers No Surrender, which was awesome, and featured my boys Cannonball and Sunspot. But it's Quicksilver No Surrender, and it essentially is Quicksilver stuck out of phase with the real world because he ran too fast. And there's this evil presence purposely trying to hurt Quicksilver. And one of the people that he goes after is Magneto. And in it, Quicksilver, through his own monologuing and thoughts, he kind of addresses the fact that, yes, Magneto is not his dad, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't still have unresolved daddy issues with him. And it really does handle in an interesting way that I would love to have seen picked up literally anywhere, but it's not, as far as I'm aware of.
Well, one of the things that I loved in Onslaught was Mark Waid was writing Avengers and X-Men at the same time. And so when he was doing the Jean Grey Xavier thing, where Xavier as Onslaught confesses to her that when she was a teenager, he had a thing for her, you also have Wanda being asked to team up with Magneto in Avengers, and this is your dad. And she spells out basically their brotherhood time. Look, he used to hire a bunch of human soldiers to go around with us. And if we tried to leave, they would scare us into staying. But he would say that he was a mutant supremacist and no humans. Look, when he needed somebody sexy and young to go attract some other supervillain, he was like, go over there and dance for them. Or here is my beautiful Wanda. And she's like, that was my teenage years. That was my childhood. Even before that was a father-daughter relationship. That was her mentor teenager relationship with him. And I think a lot of the way that I look at them still is framed in that even before she knew or thought that was her father figure. That was her mentor, her opening to the bigger world, because Magneto was a worldly older man. And he had these teenagers that he suckered into this, little army.
That's one thing that I really like about comics, and specifically Marvel and DC, because you have these decades of continuity that now, because I hate, it sounds so cliche to say, but now that we're more woke and people are understanding titles and actions, not even just in the comic world, but in the real world, now having to go back through and decipher and retcon stuff in a way that you can have these impassioned conversations about something that Magneto did years ago. You can say Xavier is a jerk. It doesn't change that now they're written better, but that history, there's no escaping that. And so when you bring up something like, I'm this, whatever teenage girl, but I'm the sexy one of the brotherhood, so let me lure in these men for you to kill or whatever. It's like there are some children, specifically little girls, who are being kidnapped. And then now, what do they look like when they're 32 versus like 14? So that's what I like about these comics that have run for so long, because so many creative teams have had their hands in it. So many different biases of like, what is the family for this writer versus this writer and this artist? Now, when things are actually getting better, when you do get a better version of Scott, a better version of Xavier, whatever, it's still like, this is great and I can go with this, but it's still built off of the trauma of the last 40, 50 years. So I like that. So even your worst character has history that is indicative of that time. That is Wanda of the 1970s is somebody's real life or someone's real imagination based off of the world they were in at that time. For her not to be his daughter, but then kind of be, I like that particular, I like that we can't escape the history of comics, especially when you're dealing with the family in comics. 20 years from now, Wanda might be Magneto's mom, so some kind of way. But
wouldn't be the first.
Right. Because isn't Storm like Bishop's grandmother, Bishop Bishop's grandmother,
Storm or M, I think.
M,
M, I think so.
M was supposed to be similar to his mother, but
Yeah.
they never confirmed it. And yes,
So that's what I'm saying. Like, just the imagination of the time period, influenced by whatever pop culture, family stuff. Like, all in all, long story short, I just like that we can't escape this history, especially when discussing families. Like, you cannot escape it. It's that's it.
I do thank you for bringing that up because I realized that I lied and I have a new least favorite X-Men family, and that is Shatterstar and his father/son, Longshot. Because I love Peter David's X Factor, like one of my favorite runs ever. But I don't know if he thought that through, because if Longshot is his clone, that means his mom.
Oh
yeah. That's some almost Fenris level messed up. And
Back to the
Whenever Spider it's a little weird, it's because she's thinking about that.
Yeah, I maybe that's why she had amnesia and she forgot all about having the baby in Eve of Extinction, is because she just realized she didn't want to remember any of that. I feel like someone didn't think all that through, and if they thought that through and there's an explanation, someone please tell me, because like at least like once every other week I'm reminded of that and I'm angry.
I also didn't say it, but one of my least favorites is obviously Mystique and whoever is her son or daughter. but that's just like that makes me like frustrated, because supposedly Destiny and Mystique could have raised Rogue together in a great way that could have been great representation, but that didn't happen. It's only hinted at.
Even if it did, and Mystique was a good mom to Rogue, the way she is a good mom to her now is trying to kill her boyfriend every other Tuesday or sleep with her boyfriend. Like, that is Mystique trying to be a good mom.
I hate it.
Like,
I mean, that sounds like a mom, but
that is her range: is throw baby off a cliff, or sleep with daughter's boyfriend, and like that is her poles. And
there's that what if too, where she raises Nightcrawler and Rogue, but it's like a V.C. Andrews novel. That was like the nice version, the domestic version of Mystique. Yeah, it's Flowers in the Attic.
Yes.
No. At least though, you look at Mystique and you think, yeah, she shouldn't be a mom. I mean, who thinks that's some prime mother material right there? I'd like her to adopt me. Nobody does, right? But there are some people I would argue that you look at and say they should be good parents. Like they have the capacity to be good parents. Whereas I would argue Mystique doesn't.
Well, I love when she goes after Gambit and tries to prove that he's not good enough for Rogue, and she sneaks into the X-Men disguised, and she tries to sleep with Gambit, and she gets the other students riled up, and then reveals herself and is like, I want to join the team. And Nightcrawler asks her, do you know how uncomfortable this is for me? And she's like, I forgot you were even here. Like it's all about Rogue's boyfriend and Rogue's life. Nightcrawler is not even a thought.
Yeah, that was an uncomfortable arc, but at least we got bling out of it. That's the only bright side.
But she's not. Anytime like Rogue is like, well, we had that one really nice day, or I remember that one really nice. You taught me this growing up, and it was like, don't make this look nice. It was.
I'm pretty sure that the timeline of how that all worked out is Mystique infiltrated the X-Men, tried to sleep with Gambit, fought with them, ended up teaming up with the X-Men and bringing along someone she wanted Rogue to marry instead.
Wow.
And then she joined the X-Men and betrayed them. That is that whole like timeline of Mystique just being Mystique. You're right. No one expects good parenting out of her.
Okay, so before I get more frustrated about this, it frustrates me because they're all like kind of bad parents, but in the case of Mystique, it's like exaggerated bad. And
Yes.
Is it?
I think there are some reasons behind that. I'm just gonna say it.
Yeah. Isn't Blindfold kind of part of that whole convoluted family now? Like, isn't she like Destiny's granddaughter or something?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that family wasn't damaged enough as it is. They had to make Blindfold and her brother, who tried to murder her for like 20 issues, because that actually tracks for Mystique's family. So I guess that makes sense now.
I do think the X-Men were open to medication and therapy. Is canonically
We need to talk about that in a show.
Magneto has, he's bipolar. He's got a chemical disorder. So he got on some medication.
And Wanda too.
Has chemical and biological reasons for why she acts out. She got on some medication.
And therapy. If, for the love of God, someone get Richter in therapy, that man saw his dad murdered in front of him. And ever since then, he has this really concerning habit of trusting men who step into his life and giving them undying loyalty, even though they are blatantly evil.
Them daddy issues.
Like, someone give that boy therapy, please.
Okay, so I think the last thing I want to ask you all is what you have been talking about this a little, but maybe expand more. What would you like to see regarding families more done in the X-Men in the future? I usually also think
Okay, I'm gonna jump in.
Your wet dreams.
I'm gonna jump in because this is the rant I've been sitting on. Alpha Flight introduced two characters. You had Flex, Adrian Corbo, and his brother, Radius, Jared Corbo. It was implied that Flex was Wolverine's son, and then no one ever spoke about it again. And then his half-brother is Eunice the Untouchable's son, and is related to the Acolyte Unison as well. Like, that family dynamic, it wrote itself. Like, who is their mom that had a kid with Wolverine and Eunice? They had such great dynamics between them. How would Flex interact with the 10,000 of Wolverine's other kids? Like you have Eunice on the island now. You have Unison on the island now. How do they interact with Radius? Like, I just want to see that story. I've been begging for this story for 20 years. Someone give me my Flex story, please. Please.
Yes.
I love your passion, Michael. Actually, I think I'm getting what I want. We got the New Mutants. We get to see them sitting and having coffee and tea together. We got to see Moonstar and Shan have a nice discussion. And Moonstar and Rhayne having a discussion. And we are getting these family beats that we've been missing, I think, for a long time. We're getting the Summers clan on the moon, and they're having dinner almost every night. Scott's eventually going to get his sandwich. What was I going to say? There was a moment where, I don't know. We keep getting these character beats. We get to see Beak and his family, and even though his parents were killed, we get to see that moment where he's there and he's ready to defend his family. I love Beak. I have a special place for Beak. But we get to see him and his wife and his children and just kind of see them living in their domesticity, we get to see that people are kind of settling in they're making those times where they're there for each other. And in X Factor specifically, I love that we are getting to see Kyle talking to his family and saying, you know, I want to see my husband be a dad. And then we get to see North Star with Prodigy acting like a dad. I love that. I love this idea that, you know, you don't necessarily have to adopt, but you can be in the same proximity and have that family bond without any legal thing making it so, but just your responsibility towards that other person. I love it. I love what we're getting right now.
I kind of wanted the same thing, but I'd also love to see it taken a step further, right? Because, like, you know, the whole overarching theme is that, you know, these are people who are looking for a place to belong. You know, you're looking for your tribe, you're looking for acceptance, and you know, now they have that because they have their own place. They have somewhere they can be safe. They have a way to come back if they're not. But I think there's a possibility to take it a little bit further, because you know, essentially you've had those relationships all along with each other, and haven't really realized that you've had what you wanted. You know, which was kind of my Summers argument too. You know, appreciate what you've got in the other people who fought for you when it was hard, even though now you could argue that it's easier because you can't die unless you're a clone, and you know, or you're phasing through things and you can't be resurrected, whatever.
Oh man. I'm of the same mind. I would honestly, and I never thought I would say this, but I would like for Marvel and the mutants to adapt what DC has done with the Bat family, with the Wonder Woman family, with the Super family, where even if we don't get a book that this is the Summers book, this the St. Croix book, this is, even if we don't get that, I would like 4 or 5 issues dedicated to each family. Give me some in-depth. I mean, sure, we can fight big bads and everything, incorporate that, but give me, how does the Summers clan work together when they're at a family reunion in the Savage Land and now they have to fight a T-Rex? You know, how does now whoever Magneto is related to, what do they do when you're in some plastic cube for 3 issues and you have to get out but can't use those magnetic powers? Like, give me the Batman and Superman family with the actual families, be it found family, adopted family, or whatnot, but give me that, because again, I feel like, again, back to my favorite, Monet, if I can just see her and Implate team up, give me Nicole and Claudette, like, give me that. What does that family look like on a road trip to get an Infinity Stone when the kids are upset and you're mad, arguing with your brother about your mom's favorite, or, you know, whatever. Give me a solid DC style, quote unquote, this family or this family. That's what I would like to see. Yeah.
I'd read that.
Same.
So mine is limited in a certain way, but I've been thinking a lot lately about when Roberto had his Avengers teams, New Avengers and then USA Avengers. And his goal there was really, I'm going to be my dad, but good. I'm going to be Charles Xavier, but good. I'm going to be Magneto, but good. And it was all about him bringing people together, including a lot of the New Mutants and other superheroes, and supporting each other. I mean, he really kind of made a family there in a situation where he was like, Demiurge and Hulkling are on the team, but they're kids, so I'm going to watch out for them. I'm going to take care of them. And Sam is my brother. Sam will always be my brother. And that kind of family dynamic I miss in the current books. I feel like a lot of people are more disposable, or the relationships are a little more glib sometimes. And I would like to see characters that really care about each other and care about keeping that family bond or keeping the door open for other people. A lot of the current stuff because of the politics of Krakoa, is about keeping people outside the door and calling Wanda the Pretender every 5 seconds and that kind of thing. So I would like to see the door opened for people. I would like to see somebody telling people they can come in, that they can't come in provisionally, not well, you can come, but your boyfriend can't come, or that kind of thing, but just there's a place for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Duna?
Oh, and so I can't decide. I have two things I really well. One is what I came like. I'm gonna say this, and what I thought I was gonna say, and the other is what I thought hearing all of you, and and what I was gonna say is probably something very selfish, which is like you all know I love Iliana, so I would love to see a book that treats, uh, the relationship with Colossus is a good place to have something that treats her more deeply as a character.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the fact that she's in every book, but it doesn't dive deep in any of those. I don't like that. That's a very weird spot for me to have my favorite character in. Like I guess other people would be like super excited about that, but I'm like, yeah, but I'm not seeing her. I'm just seeing 2 lines here and 2 lines there. And I would love to have something more focused so I can read like in my room, like relax to read like a lot of issues of stuff happening to Liliana, having to be, there has to be a conflict. So possibly with Michael. No, I don't know how to pronounce the name, but the bad brother.
Okay.
And because that could be a good way to unite Colossus and Liliana, and possibly even with Michael. Yeah, I think it's that. And okay. And yeah, and that would be something, I don't know. I already saw a pitch a time ago that Marvel didn't pick up, which was like based on Russian literature and was pretty cool for my taste. Like I wish it did pick up, but that's what I would love to see, and I would be content with this in another book, like having a little bit more of Iliana here and there relating to her stuff. It's weird because they have gone to Russia a couple of times, but it hasn't gone like anywhere near thinking about her childhood or anything, which doesn't have to be the motive, but that's the easy one for me. And
I was just going to say that so I fell behind comic books and I'm just now catching up, and I do find it very interesting that there's this whole plot line related to Colossus and Mikhail, and no one's remembering Ileana. Like she's just oddly absent. Like they did a very weird let's round up all the Russian mutants, and no one, like, maybe they're just afraid of magic, which fair. I mean, magic
to hell.
Magic did murder the last evil beast he came up against, so maybe Hank's just like, I'll let her be. But it was still an odd way to leave her out of her literal family.
Yeah, and also like rounding up all Russian mutants was not a good luck. Like, Fresker. Okay, so and the other thing I was thinking when I was listening to you all is that, well, I already told this, but like it would be nice to have some way, as Gabriel said, of reckoning all this thing with Magneto and Wanda and Pietro that actually acknowledge the fact that they're Romani. I would love to see that, because they don't talk about that in the comics. So it's just like us knowing that they were Roma before because Magda was, but also after Peretcon because they're new fathers also. And I would love to see that acknowledged, and possibly if there's, I would like to see an explanation of why Magneto is to them, that deep dive a little bit into the character. Maybe it's because they remind him of things that he has done wrong with Magda. Maybe it's, like I'm willing to see the thing, but I want to see the thing, and I want to see things like acknowledged, and not only fictional things, but real world things that present in fiction, which I think always happens. We all talk about mutants, but we don't talk about a lot of the things that affect them, that would affect them in real life. And and I don't know if any one of you has any other thing they wanted to talk about family that they haven't talked about.
Well, something we do on our podcast is at the end of every episode, I ask or I describe a fun fact. They're not always fun. They're usually scary. But at the beginning of this episode, Gabriel started naming off members of the Guthrie clan. And I want to see if all of us together can come up with all of their names. And I have 3 other members of the family in mind that were not named. And I want to see if we can come up with those 2. I've got them written down so I can check them off.
Also, trivia time.
I will sit back into the last moment.
Okay, so we know their parents are Thomas and Lucinda.
Okay.
We've got those. And of course, Paige was a huge part of Generation X.
Yes.
Okay, and go.
Melody?
That's where I stop.
Melody, okay.
Sam?
Sam?
Elizabeth?
There's one left, right?
Yep, Elizabeth.
There's more.
Okay.
You're right. Elizabeth or Amazon.
Elizabeth, yes.
Oh, you said one.
There's one that flies with actual wings.
Icarus?
Icarus.
Okay. Oh, well, no more.
You got it.
Okay.
You know more than you think you do.
I'm tapping out. Okay.
We've got 4 more.
Anyone else? Or should I
Four more.
I'm just gonna start.
Is there a Noah?
They really should be
What
the new Summers.
What was that, Travis?
I said I'm just gonna start naming Waltons.
Okay. So we have Jebediah, who shoots electricity from his eyes. We have Lewis, who is Melody's twin.
Oh.
We have Joel, who joined the Friends of Humanity.
Yes.
We have Ray Jr., who is the son of Lucinda's dead boyfriend.
Right.
And if we count his dad, it was, I think, Ray Fisher.
Yes.
We have Josiah, Sam's son, if he counts.
Yes.
And Sam's wife, Izzy, if she counts.
Okay.
And then there's at least one that was never named and may or may not exist because sometimes she's there and sometimes she's not. And she may be a blonde or she may be a redhead.
Oh, geez, right? No.
Is that Sissy?
What was that?
Was that Sissy?
Yeah, it was like, we don't know if they were referring to her as like Sister Sissy or like Sissy or like, yeah.
Okay. And then there is a cousin and an uncle.
Oh.
Uncle.
I don't know.
I'm impressed with you, Gabriel. You like nailed it.
I love my Guthries. I don't remember I vaguely remember oh my God, I remember the cousin. He was there when Icarus was introduced. They were part of the band together, but I have no idea what his name was. Was he Seth?
Cousin.
Was he Seth? Is there a Seth? I feel like there's a Seth Guthrie, but I have no idea who he is.
There's cousin Seth, but then there's also a female cousin.
Oh, God.
God,
Abigail? Maybe.
Okay, I'll just say it. So, female cousin is Bonnie.
Oh. I was like, I wouldn't have guessed that. No.
And then
We all remember Bonnie.
You know the uncle.
I'm too dyslexic for this.
I'm so bad with names.
I know that they had an uncle because it was relevant after the dad died, but I have God if I know his name.
Okay, Uncle Lucas.
Oh, I did know that on some level.
I have forgotten literally every name that I didn't know prior to this.
Well, I had to look these up. Like
right now, I only remember Lucas. That's my span of attention and time. So,
So yes.
Dang, that was
so
cool.
that was fun.
So what I'm getting out of this conversation is we need to have an X-Men title that just cycles through the families.
Family Ties.
I'm just gonna say we already used a title called X-Men Legacy that would fit perfectly.
Mhm.
And we need to canonically name and age and give hair color to all of the Guthrie children,
Again,
because
yes.
Yeah, that was amazing.
I agree.
Don't propose that to Sinister.
you know what? I'll be
Not a good
honest.
idea.
Like, I hate Sinister, but if Sinister being interested in the 10,000 Guthries is what it takes for them to be on a comic, I'll still read it.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, it's a good villain for that
'Cause-
thing.
Because also you got Cannonball, who is nigh invulnerable when blasting, and also maybe immortal.
Yeah.
You have Icarus, who is immortal as long as you don't chop off his wings.
Mm.
You have Husk, who, even though everyone forgot about it, in her first appearance, she husked into a bird. And you have Jebediah, who generates electricity from nowhere, and also Arrow, who just flies, because that one's weird. But like, there's so much potential in that family.
Yeah. I agree. I agree.
So
Yes.
today I learned about Gabriel's passion with the Guthrie family.
The Guthrie family and Flex, my two X-Men obsessions.
If we just make Adam X the Guthrie, I'm sure they will break out. The
Yo.
separated of families.
That is one way to make me care about Adam X.
Not wrong.
Okay, so this was fun. If anyone wants to say anything more about any family stuff, drop it now or forever.
More Monet in St. Croix family. More Monet. There's a
Yes.
More Monet and the St. Crow family as separate people. No more Monet and the St. Crow family as just one person. Can we leave that behind?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that was the worst part of that Generation X stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't like Monet as a villain. It was
Yes.
fun for a moment.
And also the name I have to bring up. You have M and M Plate, who when they merge together become M Plate.
Yeah. That was so lazy. That was kind of lazy. Yeah.
No more M Plate, just M and M Plate and the girls. I'm all about that.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so thank you, all of you three, for coming. That was super fun.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Duna.
Yes, it's fun.
Yeah, I'm really happy of organizing parties now. We have guests, but we have moved on to parties.
Yeah.
And I hope the people who watch it when it's done like it, and the people I see some people have liked it and love it. So yay. And okay, so till 2 weeks from now, I don't know if to say what the next show is about to make people like interested. The next show is about identity and reading X-Men, which is a great topic. And we have Danny Kinney and I'm blanking out on the name of the other person.
Oh.
But Thag Rabiroff. We have those two guests who write incredible essays, like coming to talk, and I guess I'll be more set up than usually because I will be listening a lot. And so thank you everyone for coming, and
all right, bye.
Bye.